"I will break you in bed," whispered the millionaire. On the wedding night, she fell in love. Hello everyone. Before we begin today's story, I have a small favor to ask. Please hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss our channel's new videos. It is quick, free, and the best way to support us in bringing you more dramatic stories. Your support means the world to us. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. Thank you very much. Now, let us return to our main character. The rain was crawling down the tall windows of the penthouse conference room when she arrived. The entire city below was a blur of headlights like a restless sea of gold and red. Emily Carter stood just inside the doorway, her coat drenched, her fingers trembling as she clutched her worn purse. She was 24, running on 2 hours of sleep and a day filled with bad news. Her mother's hospital bill had doubled. Her landlord had given her a final warning. And tonight, the last thread of stability in her life had snapped. At the head of the long marble table stood Alexander Hale, the 32-year-old tech millionaire. Everyone in New York whispered about crisp suit, cold eyes, a jawline carved out of granite. His entire aura felt like something engineered for control. And Emily, small and soaked from the storm, felt like she should not even be breathing the same air. He did not offer her a seat. He did not offer her a towel. He just slid a folder across the polished table. "Read it," Alexander said, his voice smooth but razor-sharp. Emily opened the folder with shaking hands. The words blurred for a moment, but the header was unmistakable. Marriage contract, 6 months term. Her knees almost gave out. This must be a mistake. No mistake, Alexander replied. I need a wife immediately. The board is pressuring me and my inheritance terms require stability. His gaze narrowed, studying the exhaustion on her face. You need money, a very large amount of it. Her throat tightened. He knew. Somehow he knew everything. Alexander moved closer, each step slow and deliberate, stopping only inches from her. Before you refuse, understand this. I will clear every hospital bill, pay off every debt. You will live comfortably. You will want for nothing. His eyes held a glint of something unreadable. But you must fulfill the role. Publicly, perfectly. Emily tried to speak, but her voice cracked. Why me? You are quiet. You do not lie well, and you do not care about wealth. He said it as if those qualities were rare gemstones. The air felt thin. The thunder outside shook the windows. Then he leaned in his voice, dropping to a whisper, not seductive, not gentle, but heavy with warning. Do not misunderstand, Emily. This marriage is a transaction. If you break any part of it, his breath brushed her ear low and cold. I will break you first. A chill shot through her spine. She stumbled back, her face flushing with fear and something else she could not name. He straightened again, emotionless, as if he had not just delivered a threat disguised as a promise. But she thought of her mother lying in that hospital bed, fighting for breath. She thought of the eviction notice taped to her door. She thought of how the world always seemed ready to crush people like her. Her fingers tightened around the contract. Where do I sign? She whispered. Alexander's expression did not change, but something in his posture shifted almost imperceptibly. He handed her a pen, a sleek silver one, with his initials carved in black. Good, he said softly. The wedding is in 72 hours. Emily's signature landed on the paper like a quiet surrender. When she lifted her gaze, Alexander was still watching her, calm, unreadable, powerful. She wondered just for a fleeting second what kind of man needed to hide his heart behind contracts and coldness. She would not discover the answer until their wedding night, and by then it would already be too late. Emily had never seen a home like Alexander Hale's estate. The black car that picked her up rolled through iron gates taller than any billboard in her neighborhood. Manicured gardens stretched on both sides, glowing under soft pathway lights. The mansion itself rose like a museum, all stone columns and towering windows too silent to feel alive. She stepped out of the car, clutching the same purse she had used for 3 years, its strap fraying. Her breath steamed in the cold air as she stared up at the building that now somehow belonged to her life. Inside, everything smelled like polished wood and expensive cologne. The foyer ceiling arched 3 stories high, a chandelier dripping with crystal light. Emily froze on the marble floor, water still dripping from the ends of her hair. She felt like dirt on white silk. A middle-aged woman in a navy dress approached with a stiff smile. "Welcome, Mrs. Hale." Emily nearly corrected her. The wedding was tomorrow. She was not anyone's wife yet. But the words died on her lips. The woman continued. "Mr. Hale is waiting in the study. Please follow me." Emily walked behind her through hallways filled with art she did not recognize. Everything felt too large, too clean, too cold. Her heartbeat echoed in her ears. A part of her wanted to run, but the contract in her purse tugged her back to reality. The study door was open. Alexander stood beside a table of documents. Sleeves rolled up, a glass of bourbon untouched beside him. He looked different outside the boardroom, but not softer, just more dangerous in a quiet way. He glanced up. "You are late." "I missed the earlier train," she said, trying to keep her voice steady. "Then leave earlier next time." He returned to the papers without waiting for her reaction. "We have an agenda before the wedding tomorrow." She swallowed hard. "An agenda?" Alexander tapped one of the folders. "You will learn how to stand beside me. What to say, what not to say. You will memorize details about my company, my family, and my schedule. The board will watch you closely. A single mistake reflects on me." Emily nodded even though her stomach twisted. He spoke about her life as if it were a corporate presentation. He handed her a slim binder. Inside were bullet points, event dates, names of people she had never met, and a list of behavioral expectations. Page 3 held a section titled Physical Boundaries and Public Intimacy. Emily's face burned. She closed the binder quickly. Alexander noticed. "If you cannot handle reading it, you will not handle living it." She forced herself to flip the page. His voice stayed calm, almost clinical. "We must appear convincing. Hand-holding, occasional closeness, nothing more and less necessary. Public perception must remain intact." His tone was so detached that she almost forgot the moment in the conference room. The moment he leaned in, the whisper that still replayed in the back of her mind. He watched her carefully. "Speak." Emily blinked. "Speak what your concern. You clearly have one." "I just want to do this correctly. I do not want to embarrass you." A strange flicker crossed his face. Not softness, but something close to surprise. He sat down and gestured for her to do the same. "Very well. We will start with simple questions. When someone asks how we met, what do you say?" Emily hesitated. "At the charity gala last February, good." "And what is my favorite bourbon?" "Maple Ridge Reserve bottle number 12. And the reason for our rushed engagement, Emily inhaled. We wanted privacy. We did not want the media involved. He nodded once. Acceptable. For the next hour, he drilled her gently but relentlessly. She answered, stumbled, tried again. He corrected her posture, her tone, even the way she held a glass of water. By the time they finished, her head spun with details. She rubbed her temples exhausted. Alexander closed the binder. You did better than I expected. It was the closest thing to a compliment she had ever heard from him. He stood adjusting his cuff. Your room is down the hall. Rest. Tomorrow changes everything. Emily rose slowly. Good night, Mr. Hale. He looked at her for a long moment, eyes unreadable. Good night, Emily. She turned to leave, but before she stepped out, she heard his voice again, low and almost to himself. Let us hope you do not regret signing that contract. Her hand tightened around the door frame. She did not know yet that regret would not be the thing breaking her. Something far more complicated would. Tomorrow she would become the wife of a man she barely understood. And the night after that, her heart would begin to betray her. The morning of the wedding felt unreal, almost dreamlike, as if Emily were walking through someone else's life. Sunlight poured through the tall windows of the guest room, catching on the white dress laid out on the velvet bench. It was stunning, hand-stitched, delicate, shimmering like frost. She touched the fabric with hesitation. It felt too expensive for her hands, too perfect for a girl who had spent most of her life budgeting every dollar and skipping meals to make rent. A soft knock sounded. The housekeeper from the night before entered with a polite smile. Mr. Hale asked me to assist you with preparations. Of course, he did. Control was his natural language. Emily let the woman help her dress lace the back and fasten the small pearl earrings that matched nothing she owned. When she finally looked in the mirror, she hardly recognized the woman staring back. The reflection looked confident, elegant, composed, but inside her heart thudded wildly. Mrs. Hale, the housekeeper whispered almost in awe, you look beautiful. Emily thanked her quietly, though the title still felt like a borrowed name. A few minutes later, she was led downstairs toward the hall where a small private ceremony would take place. No guests, no family, no friends, just a lawyer, a notary, and a man who seemed more like a storm than a groom. The doors opened. Alexander stood at the end of the aisle wearing a tailored black suit. His gaze swept over her slowly, deliberately, like he was assessing every detail. His expression did not change, but the silence between them shifted heavier, sharper. Emily walked forward, each step echoing through the marble chamber. When she reached him, the officiant began the formalities. Everything moved too fast. Her voice trembled when she repeated her vows, but she said each word clearly. She could feel Alexander watching her, not with affection, but with a cool intensity that made her spine tighten. Then it was his turn. Alexander spoke each line calmly, effortlessly, like reciting a business contract rather than a promise. Yet something in his voice deepened when he said, I take you as my wife. It was not emotion. It was something else, a warning, a claim. The officiant declared them husband and wife. A pen was placed in Alexander's hand, first then in hers. 2 signatures, 2 lives tied together by ink, legal terms and desperation, no cheers, no celebration. Just a single quiet moment when he took her hand to slide on the ring. His fingers brushed her skin. A tiny spark shot up her arm. She tried to hide her reaction, but his eyes flickered as if he had noticed. Mrs. Hale, he said softly, his tone unreadable. Welcome. The ceremony ended. The staff disappeared. The silence returned like a closing door. Alexander offered his arm. There is a reception prepared. Only us come. Emily hesitated before taking it. His arm was solid, warm, unsettling. They walked into the dining room where a small table for two sat near a window overlooking the city skyline. The meal looked exquisite, but she could barely swallow the first bite. Her nerves twisted tighter with every minute. Alexander watched her closely. You are very quiet. I am trying to do everything correctly, she answered honestly. You are doing fine. His voice dropped a note almost gentler. Better than expected. But then his gaze sharpened again, returning to the steel she met. When dinner ends, we will address the next part of the contract, he said, as if discussing a schedule. Tonight must look convincing. The board believes we are on our honeymoon. Emily's fork slipped slightly, her breath caught. He noticed. Relax, Alexander said. I do not intend to cross lines without reason. But you must understand something. He leaned forward, elbows resting lightly on the table. If we are going to survive public scrutiny, you cannot freeze every time I touch you. The room felt too warm. Her heartbeat thudded in her ears. He reached across the table and lifted her chin gently with 2 fingers. The touch was soft, almost careful, which made it even more dangerous. You signed a marriage, he said quietly. Not a fantasy. Do not forget that. Then he released her as if nothing had happened. Resuming his meal with calm precision, Emily sat perfectly still, trying to steady her breathing. She wondered if she had made the biggest mistake of her life or stepped into something she could never undo. The night was only beginning, and the moment the sun set, the real test of their marriage would begin. The sun had barely set when the atmosphere inside the Hale mansion changed. The warmth from the city skyline faded into a quiet, almost expectant stillness that pressed gently against the walls. Emily followed Alexander down the hallway toward the master wing, her footsteps soft against the carpet. She felt like she was walking into a fate she had agreed to, but did not fully understand. Alexander opened the door to the suite. The room was enormous, wrapped in warm lamps and deep shadows. A fire glowed in the hearth. Floor-to-ceiling windows looked out over New York City like 1,000 glittering secrets. Emily stood frozen at the threshold. He turned slightly. Come in. You are not a guest anymore. Emily stepped inside. Her heartbeat loud in her ears. She could not forget the binder from the night before. The rules, the expectations, the simple terrifying line. Public intimacy required, private boundaries negotiable. Alexander walked toward the wardrobe, removing his jacket and placing it neatly on the chair. His movements were precise, deliberate, controlled. She wondered if he ever did anything without thinking 10 steps ahead. You can breathe, he said without looking at her. I am not going to touch you without warning. That should have comforted her. Instead, it made the air feel even heavier. She unclasped her necklace to steady herself, but her fingers slipped. The small pendant hit the floor with a soft metallic sound. She bent down to retrieve it, but Alexander was already there. His hand brushed hers as he picked it up. The contact was brief, but it sent a jolt through her entire body. He studied the necklace for a quiet moment. This is not expensive. It was my mother's first gift to me, she said softly. He placed it in her palm with unexpected care. Then it is valuable. For a second his voice felt different, warmer. But just as quickly the softness disappeared and the cold composure returned. "I need you to listen carefully tonight," he said. "Tomorrow the board will expect photographs. They will expect proof that this marriage is real. We need to look comfortable, natural." Emily swallowed hard. "I will try." "You will not try," he corrected. "You will succeed." Her breath caught, but she nodded. Alexander moved closer, not threatening, but close enough that she could feel the quiet force of his presence. "Look at me." She lifted her eyes slowly. "You and I," he said, "are partners in a very delicate performance. If we fail, my company suffers, and your family loses everything I promised to protect." His expression was unreadable, but his voice softened just slightly, almost like a confession. "I do not fail, Emily, and I will not let you fail either." She nodded again. She wanted to speak, to say something reassuring, but words refused to come. Then Alexander raised his hand, brushing a piece of hair behind her ear. The touch was gentle, almost tender, and it startled her more than a harsh gesture would have. She froze, unsure what to do with the sudden warmth. "You are shaking," he murmured. "I am nervous," she admitted. "There is no need to be." His tone dropped lower, steadier. "Tonight is not about fear. It is about trust." Her breath trembled. He stepped back, giving her space, and gestured to the adjoining dressing room. "Get changed into something comfortable. We will take photographs for the morning release and decide how much of the night needs to be portrayed." His pause lingered in the air. Emily's cheeks warmed. "Portrayed," she repeated quietly. He nodded. "We will handle it together. But I need you by my side, not shrinking away." She took a slow breath and walked toward the dressing room. The door clicked softly behind her, leaving her alone with her reflection. She pressed her hands to her face. She was terrified. But beneath the fear was something else, an energy she could not name. Something about Alexander's presence. The unexpected flashes of gentleness behind his eyes. The way he seemed to battle something invisible inside himself. The words felt heavy. Real. Her breath shook as he leaned in, his voice, almost a whisper. "Tonight, Emily, you do not need to pretend to be fearless." She changed and returned to the suite. Alexander was waiting near the window, his posture relaxed but controlled the faint light outlining his profile. He looked toward her, and for the first time since the wedding, he truly paused. "You look fine," he said, but the slight shift in his eyes betrayed him. He approached her slowly and placed his hands on her shoulders, adjusting her posture. "Stand tall. You are not a liability. You are my wife. You only need to stay with me." And for the first time since signing the contract, she wondered if fear was the only thing pulling her toward him, or if something else was already beginning to take root. Emily barely slept. The night had passed in a haze of staged photographs, close poses, and the heavy presence of a man she barely understood. Nothing inappropriate happened. Alexander had kept his word. He maintained distance when she needed it, touched her only when the photographs required it, and stepped back whenever she looked overwhelmed. But the real tension came from the moments in between. The quiet glances, the way his hand hovered near her back before pulling away, the strange warmth beneath his cold exterior that appeared and vanished like a shadow. By morning, her thoughts felt tangled. She stood on the balcony attached to her new bedroom, watching the sunrise bleed pink across the skyline. For a moment, she could almost imagine this life being real. A real marriage, real mornings, real warmth. But reality tugged at her, sharp and cold. The bedroom door opened behind her. Alexander stepped onto the balcony wearing a crisp white shirt and dark slacks, sleeves rolled to his forearms. His hair was still slightly damp from the shower. The early light softened his face, making him look less like the man who spoke in contracts and more like a man made of flesh and quiet storms. "You woke early," he said. "I could not sleep," Emily admitted. He studied her for a moment. "Did I do something that made you uncomfortable?" The question surprised her. She shook her head. "No, you kept your boundaries." Alexander looked out over the city with her. "Good. There is a board meeting at 10 o'clock. We need to appear together when we arrive." Emily tensed. "A meeting today?" "Yes," he said. "They expect to see my wife." His tone carried something she could not interpret. Pride, pressure, possession, she did not know. He gestured toward the breakfast laid out behind them. Fresh fruit, warm croissants, oatmeal coffee that smelled richer than anything she had ever brewed at home. She sat across from him, feeling the weight of silence settle again. "You will have to speak today," Alexander said while buttering a croissant. "Briefly. They will ask how you two met, how you feel about the marriage, and what your plans are." "My plans?" Emily blinked. "I do not have any plans. I barely understand this world." "You will adapt." He sipped his coffee as if the answer were obvious. "You adapted to me faster than most people do." She coughed, startled. "I did." His eyes flicked up to hers, steady and cool. "You did." The compliment felt accidental, like it slipped past his defenses without permission. After breakfast, the car arrived. Emily sat beside Alexander in the back seat, her hands folded tightly in her lap. He noticed. "Emily," he said, "breathe." She exhaled slowly. He reached over and took her hand. The gesture was simple, almost businesslike, but his grip was warm and steady. "We are a team. Remember that." They stepped into the Hale Industries headquarters under flashing lights and murmurs. Employees stopped mid-sentence. Assistants stared, even the guards at the elevator straightened. Everyone looked at her. Alexander placed a firm hand at the small of her back, guiding her forward. The slight pressure grounded her more than she expected. Inside the executive boardroom, a dozen suits turned toward them. Some smiled politely, others whispered. One man narrowed his eyes. Alexander introduced her with a tone that surprised everyone in the room. "This is my wife, Emily Hale." His voice was steady, confident, almost protective. Emily took her seat beside him, aware that she was sitting in front of people who questioned her worth, her presence, and her purpose. One board member leaned forward. "Emily, how does it feel to join this family?" Her pulse quickened. She remembered her training. She lifted her chin. "It feels unexpected," she said softly. "But I will do everything I can to honor the role I have taken." A few people nodded, impressed. Alexander's gaze flickered just slightly. She had done well, but across the room, the man with narrowed eyes continued to stare. He whispered something to the person beside him, and Emily felt the shift immediately. Something was coming, something she was not prepared for. And this time, it would not be about contracts. It would be about survival. The tension inside the boardroom lingered long after the meeting ended. Emily followed Alexander into the private elevator, her pulse still unsteady. She had survived the questions. She had spoken clearly. She had held her posture the way he taught her. But the look from the man in the gray suit, the one who whispered behind his hand, clung to her like a shadow. As the elevator doors closed, Alexander finally spoke. "You did well." Emily released a breath she had been holding. "Thank you." He studied her face, eyes narrowing slightly. "But something is bothering you." She hesitated before answering. The man sitting at the end of the table, the one with the gray suit, he kept glaring at me. Alexander's expression darkened. "That is Marcus Ward. He is a senior board member. He is also a problem." Emily frowned. "A problem?" Alexander stepped closer. "Marcus has wanted control of the company for years. My marriage complicates his plans. He will probe for weaknesses. Do not give him any." Her stomach tightened. "I did not like the way he looked at me." "I did not either," Alexander replied, his voice low. "Which is why you must stay close to me, especially today." The elevator arrived at the executive floor. The doors opened to a quiet hallway lined with glass offices and polished floors. Alexander's assistant hurried toward them with a tablet in hand. "Mr. Hale, the press department is requesting updated photos of you and your wife for the marriage announcement." Alexander nodded. "Set it up in the lounge." Emily felt heat creep into her cheeks. More pictures, more posing, more pretending. But when Alexander placed a hand on her back again, guiding her forward, something inside her steadied. His touch was firm but reassuring, as if saying without words, "I will not let you face this alone." Inside the photo lounge, soft lights were arranged around a neutral backdrop. Emily positioned herself where the photographer directed, but her hands felt tense and unsure. Alexander noticed immediately. "Emily," he said quietly, "look at me." She lifted her eyes. He stepped closer and gently adjusted her posture, tilting her chin, brushing her hair over her shoulder. The photographer pretended not to watch, but the air in the room shifted as Alexander's fingertips lingered an extra moment. "You do not have to be afraid," he murmured. "I am not afraid," she whispered back. "I am overwhelmed." He paused as if he understood that feeling far too well. Then he took her hand, deliberately intertwining their fingers. "Use me for balance," he said. "Lean on me if you need to." The camera clicked. Emily felt her pulse race, not from fear, but from the sudden awareness of how close they stood. Their shoulders touched. His breath grazed her cheek. His voice was warm, not cold. Another flash. She wondered whether this was still part of the performance or if something inside him was shifting. After the session, Alexander escorted her into his office. He closed the door, shutting out the chaos of employees and cameras. She watched him remove his tie and sit down, rubbing the bridge of his nose. "You do not have to stay if you have work to do," Emily said. Alexander looked up. "I want you here." The simple statement made her heart skip. He leaned back in his chair, the cold mask on his face cracking for the first time that day. "Emily," he said quietly. "I know this is difficult. I know I ask a lot, but today you proved something." She waited. "You can stand beside me," he continued. "Not as a contract, as a partner." The words hit her deeper than she expected. She looked down, unsure how to respond. Before she could speak, the office phone rang sharply. Alexander answered. His expression shifted instantly. "What did he do?" he said, voice turning sharp. A pause. "I see. Keep him where he is. I am coming." He hung up and turned to her. Marcus Ward asked to meet me privately. He said he is pushing too fast. He never asks for private meetings unless he has information. Emily felt a pinch of fear. Information about what? Alexander stepped closer, placing a steady hand on her arm. About you, he said, and I will not let him use it. Her heart pounded. This was no longer just marriage, no longer just a contract. This was the beginning of a war she never expected to be part of. Emily followed Alexander down the hallway, her steps quick to keep up with his longer stride. His expression had turned cold, sharper than she had ever seen it. Whatever Marcus Ward had done, it had pushed Alexander into a place of tension she did not yet understand. They reached the smaller conference room at the far end of the executive floor. A security guard stood outside the door, arms crossed. He stepped aside the moment Alexander approached. Inside, Marcus Ward sat comfortably at the table, flipping through a folder with a smirk that made Emily's stomach tighten. He did not bother standing. Well, Marcus said, tapping the folder. The new Mrs. Hale. I was hoping she would come. Alexander moved instantly, placing himself between Marcus and Emily. Say what you need to say, then leave. Marcus leaned back, folding his hands with fake politeness. I simply wanted to bring something to your attention. Something your wife seems to have forgotten to mention. Emily felt her pulse kick. She had done nothing wrong, but Marcus's tone made her feel guilty anyway. Alexander's jaw tightened. You have 3 seconds to explain. Marcus slid the folder across the table. Her financial records, her eviction notice, her mother's hospital bills. Quite tragic, but also quite convenient timing. Emily froze. Her heart dropped into a hollow place inside her chest. She knew all of those documents existed, but seeing them in a stranger's hands felt like being stripped bare. Marcus continued. I am simply saying the board might be concerned that this marriage is less about love and more about a very desperate woman who saw an opportunity. Alexander slammed his hand on the table so hard that Marcus flinched. The sound echoed off the walls. Careful, Alexander warned, voice low enough to vibrate. You are speaking about my wife. Marcus raised his hands innocently. I am speaking about evidence, the kind investors like to examine. People will talk, Alexander. They always do, especially when someone like her climbs too high too fast. Emily swallowed hard. Her hands trembled despite her efforts to hide them. Alexander stepped closer to her as if sensing her panic. This marriage is not your concern, Alexander said. It is not the board's concern. It is mine. Marcus stood slowly gathering his papers. We will see about that. The truth always finds its way out. He walked toward the door, pausing beside Emily. His voice dropped to a whisper only she could hear. You cannot hide where you came from. Emily felt the words cut deeper than she expected. Marcus left the room. Silence followed, thick and suffocating. Alexander turned to her. His expression was no longer cold, but stormy, conflicted. Emily, look at me. She kept her eyes on the floor. I did not hide anything. I know you did not. She finally looked up, but he thinks I married you for money. Alexander stepped closer, his voice firm. I do not care what he thinks. Tears stung her eyes, but she blinked them back. But you do care what the board thinks. He exhaled, running a hand through his hair. I care about protecting you. The words stunned her. She searched his face, expecting him to take them back, but he did not. He placed a hand gently on her shoulder. Come, let us go home. For the first time, home did not sound like a mansion. It sounded like refuge. The drive back to the mansion was silent, but not empty. Emily sat beside Alexander in the back seat, her hands folded tightly in her lap. The city streaked by in blurs of gray and gold. Every few seconds she stole a glance at Alexander. His posture was rigid, his jaw set hard, his eyes fixed straight ahead. He was angry, not at her, at Marcus, at the invasion, at the humiliation. But beneath the anger, she sensed something else. Worry. When they reached the estate, Alexander stepped out first and offered his hand to help her. She hesitated for a moment before taking it. His grip was steady grounding. He did not let go until they were inside. In the living room, the fireplace glowed softly. Emily wrapped her arms around herself, still shaken. Alexander watched her for a long moment before speaking. "Sit," he said gently. She did. He took the seat across from her elbows, resting on his knees, hands clasped. The harshness she saw in the boardroom was gone. What replaced it was serious, controlled calm. "Emily," he began. "What Marcus did was deliberate. He is trying to prove that you have something to hide. He is wrong." She looked down. "But the documents, they make me look desperate." "You were desperate," Alexander said. "That is not a crime." Her breath trembled. "He thinks I am using you." His voice deepened. "I know you are not." She forced herself to meet his eyes. "How can you be so sure?" He paused the answer, forming slowly, carefully. "Because people who use others do not tremble when accused. They do not worry about my company's reputation or my position, and they certainly do not cry in private bathrooms where they think no one can hear them." Her cheeks warmed. She had not realized he had noticed. Alexander leaned closer. "You married me to save your mother, not to save yourself." Emily swallowed hard. "But the board will wonder, then let them wonder," he said. "I will take care of it." She shook her head. "You cannot shield me from everything." He sat back, studying her face with surprising softness. "Emily, you are not the liability Marcus wants you to think you are. You are the one thing that is forcing them to recalculate their assumptions." Her breath caught. "Is that good for them?" Alexander allowed a faint smile. "No, for me." "Yes." She did not know what to say. The room felt warmer. "Closer." Alexander stood and walked toward the large window, the city lights reflecting off the glass. "Tomorrow I will call a press briefing. I will address your background myself." Her heart jumped. "My background? You mean I will tell the truth?" He said that you come from a working family, that you are not part of high society. That I chose you because you are genuine, honest, and unconnected to the power games of the board. Emily stared at him, stunned. "You would say that publicly, yes, but people will judge you." "Let them," Alexander replied. "I would rather be judged for honesty than manipulated by their rumors." Her voice softened. "You do not owe me that," he turned, meeting her eyes with a look she had never seen from him before. "I do not do it because I owe you. I do it because you are my wife." The words hit her like a warm wave. For a moment, she forgot the contract, the boundaries, the fear. She felt something else bloom inside her, something dangerous, something she tried to suppress. Alexander stepped closer, stopping only inches away. "Emily, I can handle Marcus, but I need you to trust me." His voice lowered almost a whisper. "Can you?" She nodded slowly. "I can." A soft exhale left him as if he had been holding his breath, too. He reached out and brushed her cheek, his touch gentle but firm. Good, because this time I will not let anyone tear you apart. Emily felt her heart shift an unmistakable pull. The contract had brought them together, but something deeper was beginning to take its place. And neither of them seemed ready for what would happen next. The next morning arrived with a sense of quiet determination. Emily woke early, her nerves twisted but steadier than before. She dressed carefully, choosing something simple and elegant from the wardrobe. When she stepped into the hallway, Alexander was already waiting for her. He looked composed, calm, and sharper than she had ever seen him. "Ready?" he asked. She nodded, even though she was not sure anyone could truly be ready for what he planned. The car ride to the press center felt like the longest 10 minutes of her life. Reporters were already gathered outside, cameras lined up behind barricades. Alexander stepped out first, then extended his hand to her. Emily took it and the world erupted in flashes. Inside the conference hall, dozens of journalists waited. Alexander guided her to the front row, then took his place at the podium. He did not use notes. He spoke with the same controlled confidence he used in boardrooms, but this time there was something else in his voice, something human. "Thank you for coming," he began. "I called this briefing to address the rumors surrounding my marriage." Emily felt the energy in the room shift instantly. "Yes," Alexander continued, "my wife comes from a working-class background. Yes, she has faced financial hardship, and yes, she cared for an ill parent on her own." A wave of whispers swept through the room. Emily lowered her eyes, feeling exposed. But then, Alexander said something that made her look up again, and that he said firmly is exactly why I chose her. Silence fell. Cameras clicked. No one breathed. "She is not here because of wealth or ambition. She is here because she has more integrity than most people I have met in my entire life. She did not chase me. She did not seek anything from me. She signed a marriage contract because she needed help for her family, not because she wanted a place in my world." Emily's throat tightened. Alexander continued, "If anyone wants to question her worth, they can question me instead. Because I am the one who pursued this arrangement. I am the one who insisted on the marriage and I am the one who will stand by her." He paused, letting the weight of his words settle. "For those who are concerned about the company's direction, allow me to reassure you. My marriage does not weaken this corporation. If anything, it strengthens it. Because for the first time in a long time, I have something worth protecting that is not made of numbers or signatures." Emily felt something break open inside her. Something soft, something warm, something she had tried to ignore since the moment she met him. The press briefing ended in a storm of questions, but Alexander did not answer any. He walked straight to Emily, offered his hand, and led her out through the side exit. In the quiet of a private hallway, she finally spoke. "You did not have to say all of that." "Yes," he said. "I did." She looked at him. Really looked at him and saw not the cold millionaire who whispered warnings on their first night, but a man who had chosen to stand beside her when the world pushed back. "Alexander," she whispered, "why did you defend me like that?" He stepped closer. "Because somewhere along the way, this stopped being a contract." Her heart stumbled. He lifted her chin gently. "Emily, I cannot promise perfection, but I can promise honesty, and I can promise that you will never face anything alone again." Her eyes filled not with fear this time, but with something she had not felt in years. She reached up, placing her hand over his. "I believe you," he exhaled slowly, as if those 3 words meant more to him than anything the board had ever given. "Good," he murmured. "Because from today forward, we build something real." Emily leaned into him, letting the warmth of his presence steady her. The world outside buzzed with rumors and noise, but none of it mattered anymore. She had stepped into this marriage out of necessity, but she stayed because something undeniable had grown between them, something deeper than contracts and stronger than fear. For the first time, Emily felt the truth settle in her heart. She was no longer pretending, and neither was he.